kind of just full of crap and underutilized. So we figured it would be great to use this area as a workstation, but it's kind of limited in terms of what we can fit in here that we can just buy at Target or whatever. Like this table, this folding table is even kind of too big for this space. So we figured we would transform it into kind of a mini desk office area where I can store stuff but also work on various crafts and be out of the way. And we'll have to compromise our computer station, which occupies most of the area of the office.
So how we're going to transform this space is we're going to make a little floating desk, maybe some IKEA pull-out units underneath. That's tentative. We're going to take this shelving unit out and probably make some of our own that's going to fit in here. We want it to look good and we want it to be functional, so that's what we're going to do.
So here's what you need to get for this project. Here's a basic shopping list and a price breakdown. Feel free to screenshot this so you know what you're gonna need when you go to the store. So the most basic tools that you'll need for this project are an electric drill, a tape measure, a 4-foot level, paint trays, an iron, like a clothing iron, and paint rollers. Also, you can get like a paintbrush if you'd like to, a little like touch-up brush or sponge brushes if you think that'll be necessary for your project. Now at Home Depot or whatever hardware store you go to, this is what you'll need to pick up. The first thing that you'll need is plywood. If you're going to be using plywood, you can get an entire sheet of plywood and make both the countertop and the shelves out of it. We recommend stain grade for that because it's just easier to paint, but you don't have to do that. Of course, you can also get, wood boards if that's what you prefer to do for the countertop. But for the most basic necessities for this project, the plywood will work fine. The other thing that you'll need is 2-inch wide cleats, also made from plywood. And then you may or may not have some of these other things. You'll need 3-inch wood screws. You can get whatever color screws you want to match your aesthetic in your little area. And then you also need probably about a gallon of paint, maybe less. For just the shelf alone or shelves alone, you probably only need about a quart. But if you're going to actually paint the entirety of the inside of a closet, you probably need anywhere from a half gallon to a gallon, depending on the color you choose. We chose a light color, so we required a lot more paint than probably a dark color would require. But just to be on the safe side, getting a gallon is always great. You get touch-up paint. And then also shelf brackets. So just the little things that we use to hold up the shelves, and the cost on those will vary depending on what type of brackets you want. You can get them off Amazon for really cheap. You can also get them at the Home Depot.
All right, so we're making some shelves here. So we got ourselves a 2-foot by 4-foot piece of 3/4-inch plywood, and we also got some cool brackets that we'll put a picture up right here. Why not? Put a picture up right there, something, show the brackets. You'll see them anyways. So you can get these pre-cut at Home Depot or Lowe's, wherever you're going. And I'm assuming that you guys don't have a table saw and we're avoiding like heavy tools for you guys. So if you go to Home Depot and you buy one of these, you can ask them to cut it for you to whichever size you need for your shelves or whatever brackets you chose. Just make sure it's gonna fit on the bracket. The bracket doesn't have to come the whole way to the shelf. It'll be more secure and depending on the bracket, look better if it does. So we're making 2 separate shelves here. So we got 2 different size brackets. So we're making one shelf that's 12 inches deep, and we're making another shelf that's 10 inches deep. So we can have the deeper one up top. It'll just work better. Whichever way you want to do it for yourself. You make the measurements, you make the shelf. So here, to be cutting the depth here, I'm gonna be measuring. Obviously we're gonna want our first one to be 12, so let me just come around here. So obviously if you have a table saw or you have any kind of saw and you wanna go crazy, feel free to follow these instructions. This is a subtraction cut pretty much. So basically what we're gonna be doing for a subtraction cut is, you can measure in between your fence and your blade and get that 12 inches. Usually you want the bulk of the material between your saw and your fence. just safer to do subtraction cuts. Like if you need like something really small, you just want that really small portion on the other side of the saw. Not important. So another important thing here is you only need the saw blade to come up a little bit higher than your material. Now, it doesn't have to be like wicked crazy, just like a tiny bit higher than your material. It can be cupped or whatever, just you don't need a crazy amount of your saw out of there. So if you want to get your perfect measurement, you want to come to the saw blade and like whatever your tallest tooth is, and just measure when you're moving the fence. You can see like right where the, you know, obviously right where that tooth is where it's going to be cutting. So we want 10 inches, move the fence 10 inches. You know, you can check at the front and the back to see if your fence is misaligned. You know, it's not going to be 100% perfect. So now that our shelves are cut, or you had your pre-cut shelves from Home Depot, Lowe's, whichever store, we're gonna want to apply edge banding. And this, you want the edge banding with the glue on it already, so you can take an iron and apply it. So the edge banding is so that we can cover up this ugly edge, save us a lot of time from trying to fill it, and then once we, you know, cover up this ugly edge, it'll be ready to paint. If you're looking for the edge banding in Home Depot, the packaging kind of looks like this. You know, it was hiding when we were looking for it. Okay, applying edge banding is kind of easy. I like to take a little bit extra on each end. You know, have a little bit extra. Take that and just, you know, crack that off. Oh, that was great. Crack that off, and then, you know, we'll start here. I'm not gonna really worry about this. Sometimes you can use some tape and apply it, but it's really not that big of a deal. And then you take your iron, apply it just like that. And if you find it moving, you know, the glue is hot, so it's still kind of like, you can give it a little bit of, it has a little bit of movement. And then there you go. Just move slowly down it. You don't gotta worry about burning it or anything, because we're gonna sand out any imperfections. All right, so we got our first side on here. You know, it's important to make sure it's not peeling up or anything. So, you know, take your time. It doesn't have to be quick. Just make sure it's not pulling up anywhere. And then I broke the ends off here. Just, you know, bend it back and forth, twist it. Just try not to pull up on it. Just kind of shake it back and forth. And then we're just gonna sand this because we're gonna be doing the left and the right sides of the shelf. Just so there's nothing extra hanging over there. We're just gonna repeat that for every single side on both shelves. So once you're good and edge banded, make sure you go over and check to see if anything's pulling, because you're not gonna wanna have to go back later after it's painted and whatnot. So you're gonna grab your scraper here. You can find it in the paint section at Home Depot. They're cheap. You'll use it a lot if you're doing stupid little projects like this, especially if you're edge banding. You can use this, or you can use a file. I prefer this. This is a part where you can kind of chip. You can mess up your edge banding and chip if you're too aggressive. What I like to do is go at it with my scraper and go towards the inside of the board, not out. So you're not pulling the edge banding off, you're just pushing towards. You're gonna wanna go at it from the corner. You see this? Just like that. It's not gonna be perfect, but that's okay. You're not gonna wanna push too hard. You're gonna wanna kinda like swing into it. You see what I mean? Just to get that excess off. And it's okay if it's not perfect, because we can go in with a piece of sandpaper and really perfect that edge. You don't want to use a putty knife for this because putty knives they have like a bend to them, and this is rigid. One thing you're gonna want to watch out for are these corners here. So say if I just went right in that corner, I'm gonna push into that, and this edge banding on this side is gonna pull off. So what I do is I come right up to it, and then you kind of just want to use your flat edge to keep it, and then just roll around the corner. So if you have a sander, an orbital sander, box sander, I wouldn't use just a random orbital sander. You can kind of forego having to scrape everything since this is raw right now. We can get away with perfecting it with a sander. Again, you don't have to, and I know they're expensive. That's why I was showing you the scrape method. This is just a lot quicker. So, now we have all the edge banding cleaned up. You know, we have left, right, and the front. You don't have to do the back because guess what? That's gonna be right up against the wall. This sharp edge that we've created now, you can round that off as much as you'd like, literally to your taste. If you want it super round, you can do that. I prefer not having that much of a broken edge, but you know, just hit it with your 80 grit sandpaper, take the round off. One extra thing, if you want to put in some extra effort, take that corner and ease it into the side. Just a couple of passes with sandpaper, but I think it improves the look. This shelf is ready, so we'll get the other one ready and we'll do them both at the same time. If you can't find edge banding for your plywood shelves, alternatively, you can just skip this edge banding step, go right into painting, and after you have your primed coat on, like the primer, the first coat, you're gonna see those parts in the plywood, in that plywood edge, where you can fill it with spackle and sand it and just hope you can fill it. It won't come out as nice looking as this without a lot of effort. All right, so now we're ready to start painting. I like the way that like these rollers come out. It's like nice and smooth, but you can use a sponge brush, you can use a regular brush. I like to take the tray and just shove it in a trash bag or a plastic shopping bag just so we can throw that out after and not have to get a new tray. You see how this paint's leaking out of the side like that? To mitigate that, take a flathead screwdriver and in like the rim right here of the paint can, you're gonna wanna put a big little hole. Just like that. And now when you pour the paint, it's not gonna cling like it is like there. You can tell from that angle over there, you can see the pitting from the knots, like these big dents in there. And that's okay, because this is just the first coat, so we're gonna fix that in between coats. Okay, so now we have a coat on both shelves. We're gonna let this dry. Our can says that the dry time is like 2 hours, so we're just gonna let it sit for 2 hours, but make sure you check your can to see how long you should wait before adding another coat. So our next step here, after you get your first coat of paint on both sides, and make sure you get the edge, doesn't have to be perfect because this is our first coat. So now if you have imperfections in your plywood, like these like divots from the knots, like cracks and whatnot, you're gonna wanna take your spackle and to your discretion, if you don't mind it, you don't have to do any of this. But I'm gonna fill in all these imperfections with spackle, let that dry, scuff it out with some 220 grit, and kind of perfect it up for the next coat. Now that we're good and spackled up, we can take 320 or 220 grit sandpaper. We're gonna use that to take off all the spackle. We're also gonna use it to, scuff our first coat of paint. Just smooth it out. We're not trying to take the paint off, we're just trying to make it smooth for the next coat. You'll feel, if you touch it, it's all bumpy and rough. So 220 or 320 grit sandpaper, just nothing rough.
Okay, so we're gonna paint the inside of this closet the same color yellow that we painted the shelves, but first we need to take out this shelf and get all this stuff out of here so we can prepare this space to be painted. So now that we've patched all the holes from pulling out this shelf, and we took the doors off because the space just is tiny, and it seems like a better idea to have the doors off so that way we just have more room over here, we are just going to paint this whole area the same color that we painted the shelves.
Right now we're working on the countertop, and I don't recommend this if you don't have all the tools. If you just go to your Home Depot, you measure the size that you need, have them cut your plywood at Home Depot or Lowe's or whatever store. So pretty much what I make here, if you have that piece of plywood, you're gonna be just dropping it in the same way. But I'm not saying that the plywood is a bad route. It gives you a good area to work in if that's what you need. And so we're gonna be milling down these boards, and I'm gonna be making a countertop. So in order for us to install this countertop that we have, whether or not you have a pre-cut piece of plywood from Home Depot, or for me, I made one, and we're gonna install it with something called cleats, which means all along this wall, I'm gonna take this piece of 3/4 inch ply. It's like this is scrap pretty much. So what we're gonna be doing is I'm gonna put this along the wall at the desired height of our countertop. So this doesn't have to be perfect. You'll never see it. You just want to make sure you get it on as many studs as you can in the wall. And for that, we have this little piece right here. I know there's a bunch of screws attached to it, but it's called a stud buddy. They're like $8. Pick yourself up one of those. If you live in an older house, I'll tell you, they don't really work. You're gonna want to get one of the electronic ones, or if you feel so inclined, you can just on the wall. That's about it. So we're gonna measure this back wall. We're gonna put the back cleat in first. So we're gonna get that measurement. We're gonna cut this stock right here to size and just get it screwed to as many studs as we can. So the reason that we're putting these cleats in is so that we can take our countertop and it'll just sit right on top of there. So we'll slide it into here, and it's gonna be all along the wall as much as we can. And then once these cleats are in, our countertop will be able to just slide and drop right on top of it and sit there. Also, the thing with the cleats is we don't have to worry about building legs and making it level on the floor. I know most people have had like a dinner table or a small end table that just rocks back and forth. We're not gonna worry about making legs. We don't need to use the tools or whatever, or the stock to make legs. We're just gonna throw the cleats in here and skip all that, extra stuff. Because we have this situation where we have our 3 walls that we can take advantage of. And this is 30 inches from the floor right here, which looking at it seems low, but it seems pretty standard. You can go back to the part where we made the shelves
and you can just edge band this the same way. If you want to make it pretty, you can go through all that work. Personally, I don't care. And if you don't have a jigsaw, just make sure when you're at Home Depot, you're having them cut these for you. So you got to make sure when you go there, you have the measurement of your spaces. So you know exactly what you need. You need the plywood for the top, you need these cleats. Just make sure you ask them to cut it for you. They'll do it. I think sometimes they charge you, or there's signs there that say they charge you like 25 or 50 cents per cut, but I've never had that happen to me. Let's get our stud finder and our level. These are cheap. Get your height mark for the, you know, for the top of your first cleat. Get your height mark, and to make a level line, just bring it up to that height. Bring it to, like, you know, adjust level. That's good, that's good, that's perfect. And then we're gonna wanna make a line, just like this. And what we're gonna wanna do on that line, to save ourselves some struggle, is to get your stud finder, stud line. Typically studs are 16 on center, but I don't know, wherever you live, you might. All right, so we got some of our studs marked out, and it turns out that we don't have standard studs. So something to keep in mind with something like that, we got one here, we got one here, but we also know that there's always one in the corner. So, you know, 4 studs is not bad for the back thing. We're not, you know, we're not building a deck for a hot tub or whatever. So I held this up against the wall, and these marks are our studs. I marked that on the wood so that I can just preset my screws in, just so I'm not juggling anything. Just a tiny bit, right where they are. I made pencil marks. They might not be too clear, but just like that. We're not drilling all the way through, just to get them there so they're exactly where we need them to be. You want to bring this cleat up to your level line that we made earlier. Just right at the top. It doesn't have to be completely perfect. We're not playing marbles. Just enough so the line is right above it. Put our first screw in. Once we get our first screw in, we still can give it a little bit of pitch. And just make sure that, you know, over here, are we good level? Level-wise, we're good. Over here, what are we looking like? We're still looking pretty level. I know it looks like it curves down a bit, but that's just because of the piece. Not much we can do about that. And honestly, once we set the left and the right side cleats in, if we need to adjust those a little bit to make everything perfectly level, we'll do that. Just bear with me. Hit the corners with some screws, and then we're gonna move on to the next ones. Just like that. Okay, so I'll show you right now what we're doing here. Once you have all your cleats in, see, we got our cleats in here. It's like a little ledge. We got a little ledge for this to rest on. So we're gonna take our tabletop and you know, your whatever tabletop you got, and we're gonna raise it up. We're gonna put it right into where we want it. And there we go. Do you guys remember the shelves we built earlier, or maybe at some point in the video? We're gonna be taking those shelves, adding our brackets. You know, we got some pretty ones. You can get whichever ones you want. Also, if you wanted to hang your shelves with cleats the same way that we hung the tabletop, you could do that. This just looks prettier, and it's really not like, it's not aggressive on your wallet. All right, so we're gonna put the second shelf in now, and we didn't show you the first one, but basically how I'm gonna do it is I'm gonna put these brackets on this shelf here on both ends, probably flush with the ends. I'm gonna put a level on top of the shelf and have her draw little holes in there, and then we're gonna pull it off, put anchors where the holes are, obviously put the anchors in there, and then then we can fasten the shelf exactly where we want it. Very nice.
So now that we installed the desk and we put up the shelves, we also added some like bins for my personal like bead organization, but you could put whatever you want on the walls. Put a little rolling chair here, rug. Added these, which are actually the little LED light bulbs that you can get on Amazon that don't require any hard wiring at all. So you get the look of having like built-in sconces, but you don't have to worry about it because you just recharge these light bulbs. And it's all done. And I have this cool little like work area that is tucked away in this closet. There's this shelf on the top gives more than enough space to store things that we still need to store. But I have a ton of space for all of my tools and all of my supplies and enough room to work. We also put in a grommet right here. So if you do have something that you plug in, we don't have an outlet in this closet, but if you do, then you can put cords through here. So if I ever want to put like a ring light and I need the plug closer to the desk, if I want to put, any sort of soldering iron, anything like that, we've got cord management right here. And that's pretty much it. So if there's anything that was like confusing or that you want more information on, just leave a comment and we can make a different video that's kind of focused towards just any one of the particular things. I know this was like a big overview of kind of like a big project and not all of the little details were necessarily gone over. So if there's anything that's confusing, let us know and we can explain in greater detail. And also if there's anything that, if you do have like a bunch of tools and you want to know how exactly this tabletop was made, we can also make videos like that where we go into greater detail about how to make a custom tabletop, not out of plywood but out of like wood boards, like hardwood boards. We can do that for you. We can make a detailed video on how this was like caulked, anything like that. Let us know and we will be happy to do that for you.